The story is from the male Mary Poppins. Break my phone, you'll pay for the damage. Hello, wonderful people of Reddit. I have a lot of time to myself today. My friend employer is taking the kids out for a walk, and I decided to post my own personal story of revenge here after my friend suggested it. She also insisted on helping with my username, so thanks for that. I was always the kid people picked on at school. The girls would spread rumors about me and the boys would harass me non-stop. See, I'd always known that I wanted to be a nanny. I loved babysitting and looking after kids, so it seemed like a natural career choice for me. I made the mistake of telling this to a girl who I thought was my friend, and she proceeded to tell everyone at school. As this was perceived as feminine, I instantly became the target for bullies. There was one boy who loved to terrorize me. I'll call him Jack for the sake of this story. Jack was awful. He would follow me home whilst throwing things at me, vandalize my schoolwork, call me disgusting names, steal my stuff, cut my hair in class, etc. I was terrified of him. It got to the point where I couldn't sleep from the fear of having to deal with him at school the next day. I blame him and his friends for the anxiety I had, and still somewhat have to this day. I reached breaking point not long after Christmas when I was 15. My family never had a lot of money, but we got by. My mom had saved for ages in order to buy me my first phone. No, it wasn't the newest model, but I didn't care. I was so grateful to have my first phone, and a little guilty that my mom had gone without her new Christmas outfit and had put off fixing her own phone to buy it for me. Once the schools went back after Christmas break, Jack found out about my phone. He took it from me and proceeded to read through my messages, making fun of me for the lack of contacts and telling my mom I loved her, then threw it to the floor and stomped on it in front of his friends. I was furious, upset, and devastated. This dickhead had destroyed something that my mom had worked so hard to buy for me. I started planning my revenge. I knew through the grapevine that Jack's mom was a stay-at-home mom. His dad had a well-paid job, and his mother was quite happy to stay at home with the kids, 4-year-old twin girls. I also knew, however, that she didn't get to go out much as Jack would flat out refuse to babysit, and she was pretty picky when it came to who was allowed to look after her kids. I used to babysit her friend's little boy and was pretty good at it, if I do say so myself. However, for my plan to work, I had to babysit Jack's siblings. I made a few comments here and there to the little boy's mom about wanting to get a few more babysitting jobs so I could save up some money for my mom's upcoming birthday. As luck would have it, the lady recommended me to Jack's mom, since it had been so long since she'd been able to go out with the girls. For the next few weeks, I'd go to Jack's house with the other little boy I was babysitting and look after his little sisters. Despite Jack's awful attitude, his family were all pretty nice. His little sisters were an absolute joy to look after. Jack wasn't usually in the house, but when he was, I could see that it killed him to have to be civil to me. His mom would have flipped out if he'd been horrible to me in front of her or his little sisters. They'd have quickly ratted him out. Once I decided enough time had passed, I put my plan into action. See, Jack was one of those creepy kids that liked to brag about his adult magazine stash in his bedroom. This made him cool to his friends, never understood why TBH. Anyways, every time I'd babysit and put the little ones to bed, I'd sneak into his bedroom and search around. I know this is a massive invasion of privacy, but I was a stupid 15-year-old kid, and I couldn't take his bullying anymore. I eventually found his stash and made a mental note that they were in a bag in his closet. I'd been observant those few weeks, so I knew that Jack's mom and dad had an unopened bottle of vodka in the fridge. They didn't drink a lot, and it was only for when they were going to parties. One night, once the little ones were asleep and Jack was out with his friends, I went to the fridge, opened the bottle of alcohol, and tipped about a quarter of it down the sink. His parents could afford to buy a new one, by the way. If they couldn't, I'd never have done it. And snuck up to Jack's bedroom and the bottle in the same bag as his stash. His parents found out about it not too long later, and, after Jack accused me of taking it, they showed up at my door. They weren't angry because they still didn't know who had taken it, so they asked me some questions. I denied everything, but was polite, and even offered to help them look for it in case it had been misplaced. They thanked me, but told me that it was fine. They'd find it. And, oh boy, did they find it. I was called over the next day to take the little ones to the park for an hour or so in order for them to have a talk with Jack. They didn't like arguing in front of the twins. It had frightened them. When I got back, Jack was in his bedroom. If the noises were anything to go by, he was crying. It turns out that he'd ratted himself out. His parents found the bottle of alcohol in his room, along with his adult magazines. His mother hated anything like that as she found it to be degrading to women. She humiliated him by gossiping to the neighbors about his unhealthy obsession with sex. He'd denied everything and accused me of planting the alcohol there. When asked why I'd do that, he ratted himself out by saying that it was payback for him breaking my phone. His parents flipped out. They'd had no idea their son was such a bully. They took away his phone, grounded him, and made him sell his games console to pay to get my phone fixed. I'd been saving up the money myself for a few weeks. His face when they made him hand me the money will stay with me forever. His parents questioned me about the bullying, eventually informing my mom as well. I'd hidden it from her and told her I dropped my phone. He got into a lot of crap at school after a few other kids came forward about the bullying they'd endured at the hands of Jack and his friends. A few of them, including Jack, got suspended. Jack's parents even made him got to the door to apologies to the people he'd tormented. I was reluctant to take the money at first, as it was way over the amount it would cost to get my phone fixed, so his parents compromised and told me to take enough to at least cover the repair cost. Needless to say, with the phone repair covered, I managed to get my mom an awesome birthday gift. This is really long and really badly written. I'm not a writer, so please forgive me for any errors. TLDR. Bully at school breaks my phone, so I babysit his sisters in order to frame him for stealing his parents' alcohol. They make him sell his games console to pay for the damages. He also gets suspended from school and made to apologies to his victims. The revenge was absolutely satisfying. It was calculated, clever, and left Jack facing the consequences of his actions in a way he never expected. Not only did he have to pay for the damage to OP's phone, but he also suffered the humiliation of being exposed as a bully, leading to school suspension and a forced apology. The revenge was cool. The next story is from Spec 97. HOA member doesn't know the rules as well as he thinks. Obligatory on mobile, and while English is my first language, I suck at it. This story primarily takes place between me and neighbor, who is a member of my community's HOA. Sorry if it's a bit long. As a bit of background, me and my 3 roommates moved into a housing community that is basically just a bunch of cookie-cutter townhomes. All of these homes have garages that open onto streets that wind through the community. This is important later, with your front door opening to a path on the other side of your house. There are also some free parking spots on the edge of the community where there are no houses. When we first moved in, we quickly found out that parking could be a bit of a pain during the day, especially when people had guests during the weekend. Now my roommates and I, admittedly, have more cars than the average family. Because we usually have to commute for work, we each have one. We try to make parking easier by using the garage, but we all have tons of sporting equipment, so we can usually only get one car in the garage. When all the parking in all the free spots is full, we'd just park our cars right up against the garage and leave them there during the day or overnight. We'd seen other neighbors do it, and it still left ample room for people driving on the street to get by. Well, one day neighbor come up while my roommates and I are in the garage organizing some stuff and tells us that we can't park there overnight as it's against community rules. Before we had a chance to respond, he added, "And if you do it again, I will personally make sure you're towed." His first comment was pretty reasonable. We'd just moved in and didn't know that rule. But his second comment really just made him sound like an ass and wasn't necessary. One of my roommates simply responded that we didn't know, as we'd just moved in and we wouldn't park there overnight anymore. Well, neighbor, clearly trying to assert his dominance, responded with, "Good. You better not, because I'll be watching." Well, from then on, we did follow those rules. If we parked in front of our garage during the day, we would make sure to move before we went to sleep. This worked out for a while until one faithful day. One of my roommates stopped by quickly after work to grab some dinner and clothes before heading to his girlfriend's. This was around 7 p.m., so he just parked up against the garage as it would be quicker than the parking spaces. Plus, it was early enough that he didn't think he'd get towed. Around 8 p.m. he went to head out, and his car was gone. Guess who was there, though? Neighbor standing right outside. Immediately, he said to my roommates, "Told you we're going to get towed if you parked here again." SN and my roommate argued for a bit before my roommate came back inside and calls the car lot. Well, it ends up they're closed, so he'll have to get his car in the morning. The kicker? They're going to charge him an overnight fee. All in all, it comes out to $500, which isn't a small amount of money for us. This neighbor has been an ass to us since we moved in. And even though it wasn't my car that was towed, I took this personally. To make sure we didn't get towed again, we decided to read the community rules, and lo and behold, we found out that the street in front of the garage is actually considered a fire lane and no one is supposed to park there at any point during the day. Between neighbor treating us like and the fact that we could get him yelling at his wife every night, not a big detail to the story, but just wanted to say to add to my point that this guy just sucked. I start to plan my revenge. Since quarantine started, I've been able to work from home, and my desk conveniently looks out onto the street between the houses. This means that I can clearly see neighbor's garage. I start to take notice of when he parks his car out in front of his garage. For about 2 weeks, I noticed that he would come home around 1 p.m. and leave again at 2 p.m. On the third week, I decided I would begin the revenge. On Monday, true to his schedule, he stopped by around 1. After about 10 minutes, I gave the tow company a call and said that he was parked in the fire lane and if they could come and remove his car. 20 minutes later, a tow truck rolled up, hooked his car up, and towed it off. About 15 minutes later, neighbor came out, and I could hear him start to yell back into his house, presumably at his wife. He then left and didn't come back until later that evening after he'd gotten his car. Now it was funny to do this, and I made sure to send snaps to my roommates who don't work from home. But I wasn't done yet. See, this jackass apparently didn't learn the first time, because literally the next day he parks in front of his garage again. What do? Well, the exact same thing as the day before, of course. Again, SN come out, realizes his car is gone, yells at his wife, and then goes to get it. Now, after this time, he is a bit smarter and parks in an actual spot before going in to get his lunch or whatever it is he does there midday. He does this for about 2 weeks before he decides that it's okay to park in front of his garage again. Well, who is still sitting at their desk every day and notices this immediately? Well, me, of course. And being the concerned resident that I am, I immediately call the tow company, and off his car goes again. And again, this is met with yelling. I wish that this had a more satisfying ending, but after this third time, I decided I would stop, because I genuinely felt bad for his wife, who he seemed to do most of the yelling at, as if it was her fault that he was a dumbass. What I can tell you is that it definitely cost him over $1,000. If he hadn't gotten my roommate's car towed, then we wouldn't have ever found that fun little rule. The best part was that a number of my neighbors would have their cars parked there at the same time, and they'd never have their cars towed, which made it all the better when his was. We have had a number of other encounters that, with him, in the time since this happened, and I have another story that involves the actual HOA that I'll probably write later. That one is still ongoing though, so we'll see how it ends up. TLDR. Asshole neighbor gets my friend's car towed, so I get his towed 3 times. Edit, removed initials and replaced them with shit neighbor. Edit 2. By popular decision, I've decided that this story actually won't conclude with me stopping. I've had lots of advice about recording him yelling at his wife and trying to help that situation. I've also been told that I should figure out if he's using HOA funds to pay off these bills. This one may be a bit harder to obtain since we're just renters, but I'll see what I can do. One thing to note is that he has no idea that it's me calling, and I'm trying to keep it that way. I will keep everyone updated with my progress, and if anything new happens. The revenge was perfectly executed and was very satisfying. Neighbor's rude behavior set the stage for this well-planned, satisfying payback. However, OP did a very kid deed at the end when he stopped reporting out of sympathy for his wife. The next story is from Garmstrong 318. IT manager leaves business and does his own right to be forgotten. Edit and disclaimer. I am not the person in this story. I am repeating from memory what was told to me by my friend who is the subject, or Steve of the story. I may not have the timings right. What was exactly said, please understand I was told this some time ago. Also, I'm not an expert of what he did or whether it's right or wrong. Again, I am repeating from memory. Finally, please don't PM me having a go about it being fake or what mistakes I've made. I'll just block you. Back to the post. First off, I'm on a phone, so please excuse bad grammar and missed autocorrections. Second off, this isn't about me, but a friend who I've known for years. Third, this is in the UK, where we have a legal right and process in which we can force a company or entity to remove anything related to us. It's called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations, and RTBF, Right to be Forgotten. Admins, I'm going to use RTBF instead of writing the whole thing out once or twice, please be nice. So into the story. My friend, we shall call Steve, worked for a company for over 10 years as their IT manager, in charge of the whole system. He had worked his way up from lowly desktop support right to the very top. He was also very into doing everything by the book and within the law. No underhanded shenanigans. The company had recently gone public, shares listed on the stock exchange, and as such needed a director of IT. Steve applied, and was pretty much a shoo-in until he was told the new CEO, the original owner who was pretty much forced to go public by the other two shareholders, had taken his shares and sold them and moved on, had overruled HR and hired someone else, spoiler nepotism, and he shrugged and said, well, at least they will take away most of my paperwork, allowing me to do more work. Oh, how wrong he was. When the new IT director arrived, let's call him Tom, he basically kicked Steve out of his office and into a desk in the main office and did nothing except piss about. Steve found out it was the CEO's nephew who he dotted on. Fast forward 3 months and Steve is pretty much burned out. The nephew had fired his 2 very capable assistants and replaced them with buddies who did nothing, leaving Steve to look after around 400 PCs plus associated servers and network equipment all by himself. He was getting fed up. All the while, the Tom kept ordering him to do weird things like reinstall Windows all on PCs or order him a gaming rig for the office. In one case, go to his house to set up a home network. The final straw came when Tom had got the CEO to cancel Steve's bonus for not meeting all requests made of him. Meanwhile, he buddies, Dick and Harry, got massive bonuses and rewards for their hard work picking up the slack. Steve decided at this point to start looking for a new role. It just so happened he had kept in touch with the old owner who had started a new business and after hearing of his woes had offered him a new job at his much smaller company of the same wage. It was also a much shorter commute, and he got a whole new office and nice set of benefits. Steve, of course, took the offer up, but also decided to plot his revenge. Steve handed in his 3-month notice to the HR dept and began his leaving process, sending emails to the Tom detailing all passwords and processes, plus introducing him to suppliers and whatnot. He also put on the Exchange server a scheduled task to run a batch file 1 week after he left. He also had one of these on the AD server and file storage servers and the backup storage servers. What this batch file did was open PowerShell and run commands to delete anything he was the author of, if a file, or was last saved by him, and also to delete any emails sent to him or by him. He also told Microsoft he was leaving this company and moving on to a new company on the specified date. More on this later. Steve dutifully carried out his final tasks, said goodbye, and as he last act a week before he left, he gave HR a typed-up letter stating his wish to invoke the GDPR RTBF regulations And he wants all paperwork he created deleted and the only information left for legal purposes and HR reasons, i.e., pay slips, etc. On his final day, he signed out, handed his laptop in, and left graciously, even buying people drinks that evening at the local pub near the company. He was told by HR his request was completed the following week, but they had to retain certain info, HR docs and pay slips for tax reasons, which was fine. Fast forward 2 months. His old CEO rings him up in a panic as things are falling apart. Updates haven't been happening. He can't find any details for suppliers or how to do certain roles. He also had a huge bill from finance as all their licensing costs have gone through the roof. New staff kit is all wrong. Steve kindly explains that he was fed up with Tom doing nothing and hiring his buddies, Dick and Harry, who also did nothing, or worse, made rookie mistakes he was left to fix. He also explained how the cheap license costs were because, as Steve had a lot of qualifications from Microsoft, he got discounts on products. Now he has left, they can't receive them as he is using that privilege at his new place. He also explained the RTBF, right to be forgotten, request, saying IT director had 3 months to save the info he emailed before it was deleted. CEO then begged him to allow access to the discounts, but Steve said no, he doesn't do stuff like that. Perhaps he should get Tom, Dick and Harry trained up? He also said maybe instead of hiring your nephew to do a director's role, maybe he should have been hired at the bottom to work his way up, not fail his way down. Steve hung up and has asked kindly not to be contacted again via email through HR. The new job is going great and Steve is enjoying it a lot, from what I hear. Lesson of the story, don't commit nepotism or hire buddies and expect good results. FYI, names have been changed to protect identities. I also don't know the name of the CEO, so I'm leaving his name as such. Edit. As someone pointed out, Steve didn't use the GDPR RTBF request in the right way. I don't personally know much about it, so couldn't comment. But it was a means to an end. Wow. It was a perfect revenge and a bitter lesson for the CEO who gave priority to his inept nephew over an IT expert. The CEO got what he deserved. The revenge was really satisfying and cool.